I'm 28, and my name's Jack. My wife, Emma, is 26. We've been together for almost 5 years now. I'd like to think we were pretty happy. Not perfect, but good. Maybe I was naive in thinking things would stay that way, but things have a way of changing, don't they? It all started like any other day. I came home after a long shift, tired, just wanting to kick back. When I walked through the door, I could tell something was off. You know how it is when the air feels thick, like something's wrong but you can't quite put your finger on it? I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I've learned over the years that overthinking can screw you up more than the problem itself. But there it was. A shift in her behavior. It was subtle at first. Her phone was always face down, never left unattended, and there was this coldness to her when we talked. But then, everything changed when she came to me, looking completely lost. "Jack, we need to talk," she said one night, her voice shaking like she was about to tell me she'd been diagnosed with something horrible. My stomach dropped, and for a moment, I could barely breathe. Whatever was coming, I knew it wouldn't be good. I tried to keep it together, tried to act normal, but the look in her eyes, it shattered me. I couldn't pinpoint why yet, but I knew whatever was coming would leave me scarred. My mind raced, preparing for the worst. I've been keeping something from you," she said, her words tumbling out like they were too heavy to hold inside any longer. "Jack, I cheated on you." It felt like the world stopped turning for a second. I'm not even sure what I said in response. I heard the words, but they didn't feel real. My body was frozen, my mind blank. I'd heard about stuff like this happening to other people, but I never thought it would happen to me. She sat down next to me, her hands shaking. I didn't want it to happen. It was a mistake. It meant nothing. She kept saying those words over and over, as if they would somehow make everything okay again. I didn't even know what to feel. Part of me wanted to scream, part of me wanted to curl into a ball and just disappear. But that wasn't even the worst part. No, the worst part came later, when she dropped the bombshell. "I'm pregnant," she said, barely able to look at me. "And it's the man I cheated with." Her words felt like acid on my skin. I stared at her in disbelief. I don't think I even blinked for a full minute. My head was spinning, like I was watching everything in a slow-motion blur. There it was. The truth. The absolute wreckage of my life in one sentence. The man she'd betrayed me with wasn't just some fling, he had left a permanent mark on our lives. And now, I was supposed to take that news and somehow accept it. The thought of it gnawed at me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to rage. I wanted to throw everything I could at her. But I just sat there, numb. I felt every part of me disconnect, as if my own body was trying to protect me from the insanity of it all. It wasn't until she said the next part that the tension in the room hit an all-time high. "Jack, I want us to raise the baby. I know it's his, but I need you to help me with this. We can make it work, we can figure this out. I want to keep the family together." That's when it all came crashing down. I could barely hear her over the pounding in my chest. My mind was screaming at me, telling me this couldn't be real. But it was. It was all real, and the weight of what she was asking hit me like a freight train. I could feel my hands shaking, and I had to grip the edge of the couch just to stay grounded. Raising a baby that wasn't even mine? How was I supposed to look at that child, knowing it was the product of her betrayal? Could I really do this? Would I even be able to love a child that wasn't mine? Everything about this felt like a bad dream, something that could never really happen. But here I was, sitting in front of my wife, the woman I thought I knew, asking me to raise the consequence of her affair. She had no idea what kind of devastation she had just unleashed. And I had no idea what I was supposed to do next. The silence between us felt suffocating, like it was dragging me down into a pit of despair. My thoughts were a tangled mess of confusion, anger, and disbelief. How could she even ask me to do this? How could I possibly move forward from here? I didn't know what I was supposed to feel, but I knew this wasn't just some bump in the road. This was something much worse. The kind of thing that changes a person, changes everything. And that's when I realized I was at a crossroads. The decision I would make in the next few days could change everything about my life. I wish I could say that after that conversation, things somehow got better, that we had a heart-to-heart and found some kind of understanding. But that's not what happened. Instead, things just got worse. The first few days were a blur. I'd go to work, barely able to keep it together. Every time I got home, it felt like the air in the room was thicker than before. Emma would look at me like she was waiting for me to make the first move, like I was supposed to know what to do next. But how the hell was I supposed to know? I was drowning in confusion, my head a mess of angry thoughts, disbelief, and so much fucking shame. How could she ask me to do this? How could she think it was even possible? I'd stare at her, and all I could see was the woman who betrayed me. That image of her, standing there with tears in her eyes, telling me she wanted to raise the child of her affair, haunted me. I couldn't get it out of my head. It was like a movie I couldn't stop playing, and every time the scene would replay, I'd feel myself slip a little further into a void. To be honest, I wasn't even sure I wanted to stay in this marriage anymore. But then there was this little voice in the back of my mind, telling me to try, to be the bigger person, to do what was right. The problem was, doing what's right wasn't clear. Was it right to raise a baby that wasn't mine? Was it right to stay with a woman who had shattered everything I thought I knew about love and trust? Emma seemed to think everything could go back to normal. She was still my wife, after all. She'd still smile at me sometimes, try to hold my hand like nothing had changed. But I could feel it, the distance between us was growing by the day. Her words about how this baby was our chance to fix everything kept running through my mind, but I couldn't shake the image of her lying in bed with someone else, building a life with him in secret while I was none the wiser. The betrayal wasn't just in her affair, it was in the fact that she thought I could somehow look past it and pretend everything was okay. I started distancing myself, not out of spite, but out of pure survival instinct. I couldn't be around her without feeling like I was drowning. I didn't want to talk about the baby or how we were going to handle it. Every time she brought it up, I just shut down. I'd leave the room, tell her I wasn't ready to talk about it yet, and avoid eye contact like it was the plague. But Emma, she wasn't having any of it. She'd keep pushing, as if I was going to suddenly wake up one day and say, "You know what? I'm totally fine with all of this. Let's just raise the kid and pretend it never happened." One night, she caught me staring at her phone. I wasn't trying to snoop, but she'd left it on the table, and there was this nagging feeling that I couldn't shake. I knew I shouldn't be checking, but in that moment, I didn't care. I needed to know if there was more I was missing. I wasn't ready to accept that it was all over yet. If she had gone this far with one guy, how many others had there been? When she walked in and caught me, her face turned white. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice trembling like she was caught in a lie. I could barely look at her. "Just checking your messages," I mumbled, not even trying to hide the bitterness. The silence between us was thick. She didn't say a word. She just grabbed the phone from me, holding it close like it was some kind of lifeline. I didn't get it. Why was she still trying to hide everything? "I don't need you to check my phone, Jack," she snapped, her voice low and defensive. I almost laughed, but the anger bubbling up inside of me didn't allow it. "So, what? You get to make all the decisions now? You get to decide how this goes? You get to raise a baby with the guy who ruined our marriage, and I'm just supposed to sit back and let it happen?" Her face dropped, like I'd slapped her. "I'm not asking you to forget, Jack, she said quietly. I'm just asking for your help. I'm asking you to be there for me. For us. But it wasn't just that. It wasn't just about her asking for help. She was asking me to raise a child that wasn't mine. She was asking me to do the impossible, to somehow pretend like none of this had happened, like everything was just fine. And maybe, just maybe, if I could pull off the act, I'd be able to convince myself, too. But deep down, I knew I couldn't. I spent the next few days avoiding her as much as possible. Every time she tried to talk about it, I'd shut down. I wasn't angry anymore, at least, not just angry. I was hurt, I was confused, and I didn't know where to go from here. I couldn't look at her without seeing him, the man who had stolen her from me. I couldn't think about raising a baby that was his without feeling like I was losing part of myself in the process. It wasn't just about the betrayal. It wasn't even just about the pregnancy. No, the hardest part was the realization that everything I thought I knew about love, about marriage, was built on lies. Emma had shattered everything I thought I could trust, and now I was left picking up the pieces. A few weeks went by, and I honestly didn't know what the hell I was doing anymore. Emma kept pushing me to talk, to figure things out, to make a decision. But what was there to decide? She had made her choice. She had crossed a line I couldn't even begin to wrap my head around. The betrayal was something I couldn't just get over because it wasn't just about cheating. It was about everything, the lies, the deceit, the way she made me feel like a fool. The baby? That was just the cherry on top. But she wouldn't let me be. She'd call me at work, text me 1,000 times, leave me voicemails telling me she wanted to fix things. She'd ask me what I was thinking, like I had some clear path I could follow. There was no path. Every decision felt like I was walking through a minefield. I couldn't even look at her the same way anymore. The small things she did used to do, like cooking my favorite meals or making me laugh, felt hollow now. How could I look at her and see that same person when in the back of my mind, I was always thinking of the man she'd been with? Every time I caught a glimpse of her, I'd get this sick feeling in my stomach. She was the woman I'd married, but now she wasn't. She wasn't the same anymore. Neither of us were. I found myself withdrawing more and more. I didn't want to talk to her. I didn't want to look at her. It was like I was living in some kind of emotional wasteland. We'd be in the same room, but we might as well have been oceans apart. Every time she tried to hold my hand or initiate some kind of reconnection, I would pull away. It wasn't intentional, but I just couldn't do it. I wasn't ready to forgive her, and I wasn't sure I ever would be. Then came the day that everything shifted. It was a Saturday morning. I was sitting in the living room, half watching TV, half lost in my own thoughts. I didn't even notice Emma walking in until she sat down next to me. She was quieter than usual, more subdued. "I want to talk," she said softly, her voice almost a whisper. I didn't look at her. I didn't want to. I just nodded, waiting for her to say whatever it was she had in mind. My mind had already gone numb to her pleas, her guilt, her desperate attempts to make me understand. I was done listening to her explain herself. "Jack, I've been thinking a lot about everything." Her voice was shaky. I could hear the emotion in it, but I couldn't summon the energy to care. "I know I fucked up. I know I hurt you, and I can't take it back. But I've been looking at things differently. I don't want this to tear us apart." I stayed silent. What was there to say? I wasn't even sure I wanted to try anymore. Everything she said just sounded like noise to me. I was drowning in this storm of emotions, and I couldn't find my way out. "I need you to understand something," she continued. "The baby isn't just his. It's mine, too. And I want to raise it with you. I want to fix this, Jack. I know I messed up. I know it's going to take time for you to trust me again. But I'm asking you, please, don't leave me. Don't give up on our family." Her words hit me harder than anything else had so far. Not because I believed them, but because I could hear the desperation in her voice. She was scared. And maybe I should have felt bad for her in that moment, but all I felt was anger. Anger that she was putting this on me. Anger that she thought I could just sweep the past under the rug and pretend we could go back to normal. "You're asking me to do something that I'm not sure I can ever do," I finally said, my voice low but steady. "How can I look at that baby, knowing it's not mine? How can I raise a kid with you when I can't even look at you without thinking of what you did?" I didn't want to sound cold, but the truth was cold. The weight of what she was asking didn't just hang in the air, it was suffocating me. "I know it's hard," Emma whispered. "But Jack, I love you. I love you more than I've ever loved anyone. And I can't imagine raising this baby without you. I can't go through this alone." The tension in the room was thick, suffocating, like we were both holding our breath, waiting for the other person to speak. But I wasn't ready to say what she wanted to hear. I wasn't ready to forgive her, not even close. But as much as I hated to admit it, part of me wanted to believe her. Part of me still cared about her, even though I hated myself for it. I had this twisted idea in my head that maybe, just maybe, we could somehow get past this. Maybe if I tried hard enough, we could fix everything. But deep down, I knew that wasn't going to happen. Not without a hell of a lot more pain and broken trust. "I don't know if I can do this," I said, finally looking at her. "I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again." Her eyes filled with tears, and for a second, I almost let myself feel guilty. But I couldn't. I had to do what was best for me. I had to make a decision that wouldn't tear me apart in the end. "I don't expect you to make a decision right now," she said, her voice cracking. "I just need you to know that I'm sorry. I want to make this work, Jack. Please, let me show you that I can." But I didn't know if I could ever believe her again. Could I raise a child that wasn't mine, knowing how I came into the world? Could I even look at Emma the same way, knowing that she had betrayed everything we had? Every part of me screamed to walk away. But another part of me was terrified of the consequences. What if I left, and I never got to see the person I loved again? What if everything we built together was lost for good? I didn't know what to do. All I knew was that this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the decision I had to make, whether to stay and try to build a life with her, or to walk away and let everything crumble. The days dragged on, each one blending into the next. I tried to keep things normal, at least on the surface, but everything felt off. We'd eat dinner together, watch TV in silence, but there was this unbearable tension between us, like we were living in two separate worlds. Emma kept pushing me, trying to make me see the right way to handle things, but I just couldn't get past the constant reminder of what she had done. Every conversation felt like a battlefield, with her on one side, me on the other, and no middle ground to meet in. It was a Sunday morning when everything finally came to a head. I woke up to the sound of Emma crying. I had gotten used to the occasional sniffles or soft sobs in the middle of the night, but this time, it was different. It was raw, desperate, as if she couldn't hold it together any longer. I felt my stomach tighten. I was still pissed at her, still torn apart by everything she'd done, but part of me, maybe the part of me that was still holding onto some shred of the woman I'd married, wanted to help her. I walked into the living room, where she was sitting on the couch, her face buried in her hands. She didn't even look up when I came in. "Emma," I said, my voice surprisingly gentle. "What's going on?" She looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen. "I can't do this anymore, Jack. I can't pretend everything is okay when it's not." Her voice was barely more than a whisper, but it cut through the room like a knife. I stayed standing, my arms crossed, not sure if I wanted to comfort her or walk away. What are you talking about? I can't keep begging you to forgive me, she said, her voice trembling. I know I messed up. I know I broke you. But I just want you to know that I love you. I always have. I don't want this baby to come between us, but I don't know how to fix this. I don't even know if I can fix this. Her words hung in the air like a confession, and for a moment, all the anger and betrayal I'd been holding onto felt like it was slipping away. But then, just as quickly, it came rushing back. The pain, the humiliation, the questions that still lingered unanswered in my head. I don't know if I can do this, Emma, I said, my voice breaking slightly. I didn't mean for it to, but the vulnerability slipped out. I don't know if I can just move on from this. I'm not sure I can love you the way I did before. I don't know if I can be the kind of person who raises a child that isn't mine. Especially when I know how it came to be. She shook her head, her hands shaking. Please, Jack. I know I'm asking a lot, but I can't imagine doing this alone. The baby. I need you. I need you to help me raise it, to help me make this right. You're the only one I want to go through this with. The words hit me like a punch in the gut. I didn't know how to respond. How could I? How could I possibly agree to something so insane, so deeply painful? Part of me wanted to yell, to tell her how much I hated her for doing this to us. Part of me wanted to throw it all away and walk out the door, never looking back. But then there was the other part, the part that still loved her, that still remembered the woman I married. That part of me wanted to reach out, wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, we could get through this. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down. I can't promise you anything, Emma, I said, my voice low but steady. I can't promise that I'll be okay with this. But I can promise that I'll try. I'll try to figure out if I can do this. For the baby. For us. She stared at me for a long moment, like she was waiting for me to take it back. But I didn't. I meant it. I wasn't sure if I could ever fully forgive her, if I could ever look at that baby and not feel this overwhelming sense of resentment. But I knew one thing for sure, I wasn't ready to walk away. Not yet. Thank you, she whispered, her voice barely audible, like she was afraid I'd change my mind. She stood up, hesitated for a second, and then reached out to touch my arm. I flinched at first, but then I let her. It was a small gesture, but in that moment, it felt like the first step towards something. I didn't know it yet, but something. The next few days were hard. There's no other way to put it. Emma and I tried to talk, but the tension never really left. We'd share a few words about the baby, but mostly, I kept to myself, trying to process everything. The thought of raising a child that wasn't mine still felt impossible, but I kept telling myself I had to try. For her. For the baby. I couldn't forget what had happened. I couldn't forget the betrayal. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that holding onto that anger wasn't going to help anyone. It wasn't going to help me move forward. It wasn't going to help the baby. And it wasn't going to help Emma. So, I made the decision to stay. Not because I was sure everything would work out, but because I needed to know I had tried. I wasn't ready to give up on everything, even if everything felt shattered beyond repair. I didn't know what the future held, but in that moment, I knew that I couldn't walk away without knowing that I had given it my all. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy, and I knew that. But for the first time in weeks, I felt like I had a tiny glimmer of hope. Maybe it wasn't much. Maybe it wouldn't last. But it was enough to make me stay. Enough to make me try. It's been months now. Things aren't perfect, hell, they're far from it. But somehow, we're still here. Me and Emma, trying to make something of this broken mess we're living in. The baby's almost here, and every day feels like another step down this road I didn't want to walk but found myself on anyway. It's strange, You know? The baby, this little life that I never planned for, never asked for, has started to become a part of me in ways I didn't think possible. I watch Emma now, and there are moments when I feel something like the old affection for her. And then there are moments when all I can think about is how she betrayed me, how she chose someone else. I can't shake that image, and sometimes I think I never will. But here's the thing, I've learned that life doesn't come with easy answers. Sometimes, there's no clean slate. No reset button. I didn't want to be the guy who stayed. The guy who forgave a wife who shattered everything. But here I am, trying to be the guy who does the hard thing, the thing that's supposed to make me a better person. At first, it was like I was living in a fog. We get into small arguments, about the baby, about how we were going to raise it, about her past. And every time, I'd want to walk away. I'd want to scream at her, demand answers I knew she couldn't give me. But I didn't. I stuck around. Even when it felt like the easiest thing in the world would have been to walk out that door, leave everything behind, I stayed. And you know what? It's starting to feel like maybe that was the right choice. Maybe it wasn't. But right now, it's the choice I've got. The baby's coming soon, and the truth is, I don't know what kind of father I'll be. I don't know if I'll ever look at the kid and feel like a dad in the real sense of the word. But I'm trying. I'm trying to do what's right. Not just for Emma, but for me. It's a weird feeling, knowing you're doing something because it's the right thing, even though it doesn't always feel good. Even though there are nights when I lie awake next to her, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how different my life could have been if things hadn't gone down this way. But the truth is, I don't think I can ever get away from this. I'll always remember what she did. I'll always remember how it felt when she told me she was pregnant with another man's child. But maybe that's okay. Maybe I don't have to forget it to move forward. Maybe I just have to find a way to live with it. Emma's been trying harder than I thought she would. She's been showing up, doing the things I didn't think she was capable of. It's like I'm seeing a side of her I hadn't seen before. She's not perfect. I don't think she ever will be. But she's trying. And that's something I can respect, even if it doesn't wipe away the past. Maybe it's enough. Maybe that's all I can ask for right now. I guess that's the lesson in all of this, there's no easy way out. No clean break. You either walk away, or you try to make something out of the wreckage. I'm not saying I've got it all figured out. Far from it. But I'm figuring it out day by day. It's not easy. And I don't know if it'll ever be easy. But I'm trying. And that's all I can really do. And honestly, there are moments now when I look at Emma, when I watch her belly grow and feel the baby kick, and I think maybe we can get through this. Maybe we can build something new, something stronger. It's a long shot, I know. But the idea of walking away from everything, of giving up on what we had, what we could have, well, that's harder than I thought it would be. Even with everything she's done, there's still something inside me that wants to fight for us. So we're trying. We're not perfect, we're not even close. But we're still here. And for now, that's enough. Maybe one day, I'll look back on this and wonder if I made the right choice. Maybe I'll regret it. But right now, I know that this is the path I'm on. And I'm doing the best I can to keep moving forward. That's the thing about life, it's messy, it's complicated, and it doesn't always make sense. But in the end, it's all about the choices we make. And I've made mine. I've chosen to stay. I've chosen to try. And maybe that's enough. Maybe it's enough to make this broken thing whole again.